Hi, I'm Bart Hansen. I'm the owner and lead instructor for CrushLivePoker.com. The following hand comes from our call-in show that we record at 4:45 p.m. Pacific Time every Monday. If you want to call in your hand, check out the instructions in the video description. All right, so we're going to do something a little bit different here to wrap the show up. I am going to read off a hand that was submitted by our buddy Read My Lips, Chris Sigmund in the Portland, Oregon area. Actually, you know what I'm going to do is I am going to, let's see if this is going to work out here so that you guys can all see it. I am going to copy and paste what he wrote to me here. Oh, this might not work because it's too much. Let's see. I don't know if this is going to work here or not, or how much you guys can see, but we'll read through the hand and then I'll just sort of edit it as we go along. But hopefully you guys can see this, and then Anita will use this for a hand if it goes well here too. So this is 7-handed, 5-10, no limit hold'em, 2,300 effective. Drunk, under the gun, loose player limps for $10 with an 8K stack. Folds to a good pro who raises to 50 from the cutoff. He knows the end of the gun is drunk, and the hero thinks that he will be isolating with a wide value range: pairs, Broadway cards, ace high hand, suited connectors. Loose passive fish calls on the button. Hero in the small blind with 10-10. Chris says, old me would flat here, not wanting to blow up the pot out of position, but knowing what to do if I get 4-bet, etc. But the new me, studying CLP and watching a bunch of Doug Polkhand reviews, thinks that 10-10 is way ahead of the cutoff's ISOing range. Plus, there's dead money out there from the flat call. So I 3-bet to 250. Big blind folds, drunk UTG folds, good pro in the cutoff calls, and now the other guy folds. So the pot is 570. So we're the hero. Drunk guy limps, cut off 50 call. We squeeze to 250 with 10-10. And everybody folds except for basically the pro. So I'm going to take off all this other stuff and I'm just going to write out here for you viewers. 10-10 in the small blind. UTG limp, cut off 50 call. Hero, 3 balls to 250 with 10-10. Everyone folds except the cutoff. And we're heads up. Out of position. Flop comes out. So we got 10-10. Flop comes out 9 of hearts, 9 of diamonds, 3 of hearts. By the way, Chris says, you know, what do I think about preflop? I think preflop is fine, obviously. I mean, I might make it a little bit larger. I might make the 3-bet a little bit larger because it's a 50 call. Like if you went 4 times, he's going 4 times plus the dead money, 250. He's making 5x. I mean, I think it's fine. I don't think it's a big deal. So pre-flop, yes, I totally agree, especially with what you're saying. Flop comes out 9 of hearts, 9 of diamonds, 3 of hearts. So and the pot size is probably like 550. Ish, something like that. So we'll call it 560. 993, and Chris bets 200 with pocket tens on 993 into 560, and the villain calls in this particular spot. So he chooses like a 35 to 40% type of sizing. I mean, I think that's fine. One of the things that is interesting here is that like a hand like tens will need more protection than like a hand like kings races here, right? So when you go back and you do the work on like what hands are bet, you'll actually see the lower pairs bet here more than some of the higher pairs because they don't need as much protection. So Chris bets 200, villain calls, pot is 970. Don't have a big problem with it here for those reasons, like I said. Turn is the 5 of clubs. And here it's 9 of hearts, 9 of diamonds, 3 of hearts, turns the 5 of clubs. Hero bets 675. Now this is kind of interesting here because after you bet 200 in the 3-bet pot and now the pot is like 970, betting like 2/3 here is a little strange to me. I think it's a little bit large because unless you think ace highs are gonna call you, or like 6s, 7s, 8s, something like that, you don't want to put yourself in a situation, right, where you're way ahead, way behind. And I think that this 2/3 sizing starts to get a little bit too thin. Now, obviously, if you had a hand like aces, you could do something like that. But this guy's going to have like, some overpairs too that aren't necessarily, gonna 4-bet off. I mean, yes, I understand that you think that he's ISOing because it's a drunk guy. I mean, I get that, but I think that the sizing here is a little bit large when Chris decides to bet basically 675. So I would probably continue to do some small betting here, possibly check. I don't think checking is, that bad here either. But Chris does bet 675 and the villain calls. So the pot now is 23.20. And this is where I feel like you think you've run out of some value, I want to say. Pot is 23.20. Again, Chris has 10-10. And he also says here in the email, when villain calls, I think he has slow played monsters. Any 9 mostly, nut flush draws, Broadway flush draws, suited connectors like 8-7, 7-6 of hearts, 6-5 of hearts, which are front door flush draws. He says, is this an accurate range for the villain? Yeah, I mean, I would say so. I think that he's not, because nobody really called in between after you 3-bet, I still think he's going to have jacks, queens. He might even have some kings here. Certainly, right, flush draws on the flop. You bet so large on the turn that a lot of the ace-high hands that have no draw are just going to piece off here. So it is sort of left with 9s, a fair amount of overpairs, and flush draws. I mean, I think that that's relatively accurate. I don't know if 6s and 8s here continues on to the sizing on the turn. It's possible. So it's kind of interesting. So anyways, the river comes out the ace of clubs. So it is 9935 ace. Again, Chris has got 10-10. And obviously, I mean, again, I think that Chris has run out of value when he bets the sizing on the turn, where the river was probably going to be a check. And, there's really isn't a whole lot to be said here at the end. He says in the email, after throwing up in my mouth, I take a long time and I check. He takes a few seconds and checks behind. My hand is good and he doesn't show. Chris says, should villain be using that as a bluff card? Does it look like from villain's perspective that I'm checking the river to check call? If I'm in villain spot, should I be using that ace as a bluff card to get small blind off of pocket pairs that don't contain an ace? He says, I was really surprised villain didn't bet this card on the river, either for thin value with the nut flush draw hands or as a bluff to get me off of pocket pairs. So, I mean, obviously it depends on what the villain arrives with here, right? I mean, hero's going to check for sure, right? So if the villain has 6s, 7s, 8s, something like that, should he bluff here? Does he have enough showdown value? He probably doesn't. You're going to run into an ace some of the time here as well. Some of your ace highs are bet across 2 streets as a bluff. You probably would go for some value here, though, too. And then if he just ends up with nothing, like, say, for example, he had 6-7 hearts, is he supposed to bluff that? Just because you have 0 showdown value does not mean that you always get to bluff, especially when you're blocking, your opponent from having the draws. And it really does look like, with a half pot size bet left, that you would be check calling here. The interesting thing here is if I was Chris and I had 10s and I checked and my opponent shoved, it would be kind of dicey because of the fact I would sort of need to know the player. And if he's good enough to bet the nut flush draw here on the river, like say, for example, he has, ace 4 of hearts, ace 10 of hearts, some sort of hand that had nut hearts in it, right? If he's good enough to take that hand for value at the end when checked to, and by the way, here too, I might make this into a play hand because this is interesting. You guys know those play hands like on Instagram that I do. If he's good enough to bet ace X of hearts here at the end, then we can't call the river. So a lot of people in live poker, they're not good enough to hand read here, and they are polarized, meaning that if he bets the river all in, he's representing a 9+ or a busted flush draw, right? He's polarized. So, if Chris had 10s Maybe he calls, maybe he doesn't call. But if the opponent also is good enough to put the ace X of hearts into his range, into his betting here at the end on the river, then then you're really fucked. I don't think you can call. With 10. So I think it's a little bit player dependent in that particular sense. But yeah, basically, that's what I would say. So I went check and Chris won. It if I was his opponent, would I bluff? I don't think so. I don't think that I'm going to get a whole lot of folds given this stack. I just think you're going to have, the guy's going to be getting like 3-1, right? If the guy bets at 1100, it's half the size of the pot, so he's going to be getting 3-1. So, which actually makes me actually want to overfold more in Chris's spot. If I'm the hero and I check and the guy bets all in, I almost want to fold more. But usually that bluff doesn't get through, so I don't think that I would necessarily bluff in that guy's spot. But anyways, Chris, thank you.
Hey guys, if you like what you've seen here, please click on the subscribe button and you'll get notified every time we put up a new video. And if you want to check out crushlivepoker.com for the first month free, use the code YTA200. Click on the link right there.